Okay, it is 6:30, and welcome to week 3 of Drugs and Crime. And I'm Professor Richard Wright, and I'm going to be with you for the next hour roughly, giving you details, discussing issues that relate to drugs and crime, the assignments that you have for the week. And the only way you're going to be able to hear me is to activate your audio, which I'm pointing to, so otherwise you will not be able to hear the lecture. So you have to activate your audio, have to. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, move that up. You can see the course homepage, the information. I do want to remind each of you that it is so important that you make sure that you have, okay, let's see, Ashley, okay, someone raised their hand. Let me go back and see who it was. Okay, you have to activate the audio. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing. Make sure that you pay close attention to the rubrics, and APA and critical thinking are very important in your written assignments in this course. Many of you lose points because of the fact that you don't do the APA, and you must have citations in the body and references at the end, a cover page, and if you don't understand APA, there is a section over here that leads you to the guide to help you with APA, so that you will be able to make sure that you get your assignments properly done, APA, so that you don't continue to lose points. But also pay close attention to the rubric. The rubric points that out to you, okay? So let's bring that down. Let's come down here. Your lectures, your lessons are provided very easily each week. I want to say again, some of you come in to the meeting and you leave the meeting, but you don't activate your audio. You have to activate your audio in order to be able to hear the live lecture. So if you've come into the live lecture and left the live lecture, you couldn't hear, it's nothing wrong with your computer, you have to activate your audio. And there's a tab in there that says audio, and you have to click on that, and then it'll allow you to hear the lecture. All right, so I'm going to continue on. Make sure that you pay attention to the rubrics. Rubrics are in each written assignment. And as you can see, you have open house, and then last week, because of technical difficulties, we had 2 parts to this. The first part was up here, and I sent you both parts, and part B. And you had to make sure this week, hopefully we won't have those problems. But your lectures take place every Tuesday at 6 o'clock, 6:30 rather, and go until 7:30, okay? So you want to make sure that you have that right. So it's 6:30 to 7:30 on Tuesdays. 6:30 to 7:30 on Tuesdays, all right? So now let's go over to the week 3 announcement. In our 3rd week, policy and social trends, mental health, and criminal behavior, we'll be discussing that. I sent you the PowerPoints for chapters 3 and 4 of your text, Drugs, Crime, and Justice. And then you're going to take a look at the activities, policy, and social trends, drug use, abuse, addiction, and theories of addiction and drug identification activity. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. And then your initial posts that are due tonight, your initial post, social policies and trends. And then your reply post, of course, is due Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Make sure you understand it is Central Standard Time. Finally, complete the course project, Heroin and Crime. And then there's a quiz also. The quiz is timed. So we're going to go over the requirements for the course project in just a few minutes. And then I've already gone over with you adversity is the springboard to success. All right. Moving right along. Course calendar. Here we are today at the 19th, and it tells you what I said. Your initial post is due tonight by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. The lecture takes place right now. Your reply post is due the 23rd on Saturday, and then on the 24th, your course project and quiz. Also, you should be aware that the key word or phrase that I give you also is going to be due at that time as well. Okay? So again, your initial post is due tonight as well. All right, so that's the course calendar. And then you can go through and you can look at the calendar for the entire course. You should be aware that after we finish this week, we'll have just 3 more weeks of class. So basically, this is at the midpoint that we are operating under. So let's go to Module 3. Again, let's go over the assignments. And it tells you this scenario involved here is going to be a minimum of 3 pages. A minimum of 3 pages. It's going to include at least 3 credible, reliable resources, not Wikipedia. And in conducting your research, it says rely on credible resources other than your textbook. So the key thing is that we want 3 credible resources that are not your textbook. And you should be able to find those because of this. Well, let's see, I'll show it to you in a few minutes. I showed you already where to find that stuff last week, but I'll go back again. So now let's go to what the rubric says. Remember, the rubric is going to pair out, tells you when it's due, and then we look at it, and it's going to tell you, what your actual assignment is. So it's going to be about these issues and satisfy the minimum 3-page requirement. And then remember, 3 credible resources included in your research. You focus on research in this course, and other than your textbook. That's not to say you can't use it, but you got to have 3 other resources. And then this tells you not to use Wikipedia, and it also talks about APA and the requirement that I just got through talking about before. Very important that you satisfy those requirements to maximize your points. Many of you lose points because your paper is too short, you don't have the right number of resources, or you don't have the APA. Of course, you run your papers through Grammarly, so you can check for plagiarism. Not very many of you have had that problem. So that's the written assignment that's due on Sunday. And then go back, and then there's discussion posts, and it tells you about your first post. You follow this, and then what your reply post is. You know your first post is due tonight. It says discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the strategy during drug crimes. and the war on drugs issue. So you want to make sure you do that by tonight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then your reply posts. Respond to a student, regarding the strategies, the 2 strategies to managing drug cases as well. All right? And then your quiz, which you know well about how that works because you had those already. It is time. And I do recommend that you do your quiz on Sundays so that you will have gone over the material and that you are prepared to take the test. Remember, you are abiding by the academic misconduct policy that we discussed in week 1, which, if you want to refresh your memory, it's located in the syllabus. And you want to make sure that you don't have any materials open you're trying to look. You can't anyway because you won't be able to complete the exam. But it's a bad practice. Study and put your books away as if you were in a room with me and you actually had a proctor there. Because it'll come back and haunt you if you don't. Then your live classroom, which is, it says it's due on the 24th by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time as well. And so those are your assignments that you have for the week. Pay close attention to the rubrics. Very, 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 very important. Pay close attention to them very carefully. You need to make sure that you have checked yourself against your work that you completed and that your rubric is lining up with it. The 3 minimum pages, the 3 credible resources other than your textbook, and you'll be able to find those because of the fact that if we go back here, I'm going to take you back as far as research is concerned. You have this drugs and crime course guide, which you can use to help you with your research and writing. Again, I'll click on it so you can see what it looks like. It's taking me right to it. It tells you about your assignments each of the week, your discussions here. There's a video there, which I'm not going to run it, but it will explain to you how to find articles and newspapers. And then the research process, your library database. It tells you where you can find all kinds of information. And then it says, is your resource credible? Well, you can determine it just by checking this. But I think you're going to discover that your resources are credible if they fit within this. And this is the kind of stuff, see, it's called a scrap, the scrap tool. But basically, I will say this to you, that all of the information that you discover from the library data is going to be credible by itself. This is some of you who use outside places like Google or some others. You need to make sure that this is how, and we determine it. And we already know right off the bat that Wikipedia is not one, okay? So you want to make sure that you pay close attention to that. So you want to use credible resources. And then this helps you with reading and so forth. So anyway, the bottom line is that this tool is designed to help you complete your assignments. The online library, you can't go wrong getting a source from there. And so that's it for the assignments. Let's get into the actual lesson content. Today we're going to deal with theories of addiction and abuse based on the biology, genetics, psychological, and sociology. Mental health and self-medication leading to substance abuse, and then the relationship between substance abuse and criminal behavior. I've already kind of talked about that quite a bit in this course, so I'll touch on that again. and then the policy and trends associated between drugs, mental health, and the criminal justice system. So we're going to spend a little time, and we're going to go over these two sections right here. I've already discussed the course project, the discussion post, the quiz, and the live. So let's get right in here in the policy and trends. As you know, we are in an epidemic stage, and that drug abuse and drug use is at a all-time high, and that the war on drugs has come together to crack down on drug-related behavior and activity. Federal and state laws have been passed for mandatory sentencing, and then finally you've reached a stage where the problem is that there has been an increase in the prison populations. And so, but as you know, we discussed this last week, that one of the big dents put in relating to the war on drugs took place when El Chapo was found guilty last week, and I shared with you the video. Some of you might not have been able to hear because the system is giving me trouble sometimes with setting it up so that you can hear it, so I did make sure that the closed caption was on there. But be aware of the fact that the whole issue is this, and I want you to hear me about what I'm getting ready to say, and I'm not being political about it, but I'm being real. As you know, and I know, that the President of the United States is adamant on his border wall, and he feels like his border wall is going to be a contribution to the war on drugs and individuals coming into the country illegally. However, if you paid attention to the video last week, you saw that the kingpin El Chapo and other drug cartels will bury underground and have built underground tunnels. So the wall really is not a help. In addition to that, it's been provided to us by DEA, Border Patrol, and others that drugs come into this country at the legal checkpoints, but they put them in cars, they hide them out, people have them on their bodies, they have them in luggage, all kinds of places. So it is not important that we have a wall. What is important that we have is something that some legislation was signed reluctantly by the president that allows more money to be spent for border security, providing more technology that's used, and also increasing the workforce for those individuals. But there is a very serious problem even with that. As I explained to people, you're not going to catch a big portion of the drug. So it says here that as a result, we're gradually moving away from the war on drugs based on the reality that incarcerating people is not effective for reducing recidivism. By the way, you and I should know this, that individuals who are incarcerated for using drugs particularly are going to come back out and become recidivists. Why? Very simply, drug use is the same as any other health problem. If you don't cure the individual of that, it will remain in their system and it will adversely affect their bodies. The same thing with drugs, and also drugs are available in prison. So anyway, what's the remedy for it? Is to get substance abuse programs to help individuals to be freed, because those individuals who are addicted are the customers for these drugs that come into the country. If there is a movement towards curing these individuals with strong programs for those who are incarcerated, not only to have it as a condition for being released on parole, not only as a condition for being on probation, but also for the benefit of society overall. Because those individuals, as soon as they leave prison, are going to go out and commit crimes. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. A few years back, when I was practicing law, I had a young man that I represented, and this young man had a problem with cocaine. And he had a long arrest record, been arrested many times. So here I come, and I become his lawyer. And this individual obviously had problems because he was committing burglaries, mostly burglaries, but some robberies, not armed robberies, but mostly burglaries and thefts. And so the individual caught another case, and that's when I came into the picture. And so I usually encourage the family to get the person out on bail. But in this case, I told them, because I understood that when he was out on bail, that he was going to commit crimes that could be detrimental to him and to other people as well. So, sure enough, they went against my recommendation. They got the young man out, posted bail. A short time after that, maybe even not within the week, the individual snuck out of the house because they thought that they could keep him in the house. He snuck out of the house and went across on the other part of town by crossing a highway. We call it the Eisenhower here. Those of you who in Illinois know what I'm talking about. But he crossed that over the fence and went straight over past, Dodge trucks, cars, and other vehicles coming down the freeway or the highway. And he went to the other side, and he was breaking into a house. Well, somehow or another, the police were called, and a chase ensued, and the police were in pursuit of him, and he went back, did the same steps that he did. He went over the fence to try to get back to the other side of the expressway. While he was running across the expressway, he didn't make it. He was hit by several vehicles and was killed instantly on the expressway. But that was his demise. He did it not because he wanted to hurt anybody, not because he wanted to commit a crime, but because his body was calling him to require him to get this cocaine. And so it was the drug use and the drug addiction that led to his criminal behavior. And so it is common, and I've said this over and over again, there is a very, very, very strong relation between crime and individuals who use drugs. I'm not talking about sellers. I'm talking about individuals who use drugs. And it says here, it says the thought that people who use or abuse or are addicted to drugs also engage in certain drug-related crimes is part of it, because they'll work for the drug dealers as a way also of providing it. In addition, it says there may be underlying reasons why a person uses or abuses drugs and then engages in criminal behavior. I just gave you some of those. So if we can identify, as it says here, the underlying factors of why a person uses drugs, perhaps we can then also reduce drug-related criminal behavior. I already told you, strong drug treatment programs. So it says that in this particular piece that we have in front of us, it says that there are three models of drug use and abuse: choice, disease, and self-medication. And it says the choice model, which is the first one, is based on a belief that a person makes a choice to use a substance and therefore can simply choose to stop it. I totally think that that's a fairy tale, because of the fact that when your body is in control, you are a puppet. You are a prisoner to those drugs. And so you will do anything, steal from your own parents. You will even kill to get these drugs. And so I think that's ludicrous to say that a person chooses. Unfortunately, what people do is they will try it, and then they will want to get to a high again, and then they will become addicted to it, and it becomes a way of life. So that's one. Now, here's another one. The self-medication says that people use legal and illegal substances to compensate for problems. So if they have anxiety issues, depression, or mental illness. I would also say to you that individuals also do that who are in pain, as the opioid crisis has demonstrated, and from the videos that you will see in this course, you'll discover that individuals start out going to a doctor for an illness, and then they're given ibuprofen or some other kind of painkillers, and they become addicted to those painkillers. And then they find themselves reaching the stage where their bodies are commanding them to get this painkiller, and that they can't operate and exist without it. So what do? Resort to getting phony prescriptions, having doctors that they will pay. You have doctors that will give prescriptions. They will go and they will get items and also deal with the synthetic drugs because they're cheaper. The fact of the matter is that these individuals then are involved in being prisoners to their own innocent actions in many instances. And so as a result of that, an individual finds himself creating a mental health problem. They're mentally not in control of their faculties. Their decision making is little or none. And so, as it says here, it results in compulsive. And when you have something compulsive, that means that you're not in control. The drug use is now controlling you. Basically, as I said, you're a puppet. And some say that they use the drugs to alleviate mental health disorders. Well, I think that taking the drugs actually lead to the mental health disorders. You know, it's equivalent to if a person is in quicksand and they're trying to get out of quicksand, one of the worst things you can do is keep trying to wiggle out, because the more you wiggle, you're going to sink lower and lower. Well, what a person will do here is they will find a drug that they can take, and then it gets to a point that they'll try another drug, and then after a while people start mixing drugs, and then you deal with OD people who kill themselves or lose their lives, their livelihood, they lose their homes, even if they're educated, even if they have degrees, even if they're professionals, lawyers, doctors, law enforcement officers, correction officers, probation, parole officers, same issue. It's all about this drug thing. And so the addiction is I call it the demon in the thing, and it demonizes the individual and puts them in a position where the ability to be able to make good choices is either diminishing or it just goes away completely. And as a result, they have a short life. We all know, I have a sister who succumbed to that, actually two of them that are young, my youngest sisters. And this cocaine and this crack and other drugs out here where They didn't even see 40 years old. And then there is the disease model of addiction. It says that addiction is based on a chemical or biological issue. It says thus the theory is that punishing people for drug-related crimes without addressing underlying reason for drug use or addiction will not likely change or end the pattern of criminal behavior. Bingo. That's where we are. It is a disease, people. It is a disease. Drug addiction is a disease. And we need to treat it the same way we treat the flu, pneumonia, HIV, other illnesses as well. And so treatment, and not long periods of incarceration without treatment, is going to be the thing that will help reduce recidivism. It says finally in the sentence, treatment and rehabilitation, we'll cover that much later in this course, but be aware just to whet your appetite at this particular point. With the trends that we're going in this country, again, I sound like a broken record, but it is very real, and the research bears it out, is that crime plus drugs equal disaster, or drugs equal crime. The use of drugs leads to crime. The use of drugs leads to increased crime. The use of drugs leads to early death. The use of drugs leads to mental illness. And there it is. That's it. I mean, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. And so one of the things that we're going to be facing, and you'll see there are some approaches that law enforcement is now starting to take when we come to some modules down the road. I think module number 4, which is next week. We'll be talking about the law enforcement perspective of dealing with this issue. It is changing. The whole paradigm has to be. Now, you can have all the drug cartels, you can have all the drugs in the world, but if individuals are not there, the drug cartels can't make the money. Now, how many people know that there are stores going out of business? Sears almost went out of business. J250 has problems. All of the stores, because of Amazon. What it is this. People are not buying the products in those stores. They're going online and having them shipped. So what has happened is that those companies begin to go down. Same thing here. If individuals are not buying the stuff, or put it this way, point blank, if there are no customers, then it's going to decrease. Now, I don't think we'll ever eliminate completely, but the approach has to be dealing with, of the 3 models, the disease model as a way to deal with this issue. Okay? Any questions? Comments? Okay, sounds good. But you got the essence of what we're talking about here. When you do your readings, you're going to discover that this is exactly where the whole thing, or as we say, get to the, we use the term in the street, nitty-gritty, or the root or the heart of the matter. Let's treat this as a disease. Let's get people cured. Let's spend more money on not just education, but on the health aspects of it. Because, again, you can have all the law enforcement, more jails, more police, more prisons. Still going to be the same problem at all. And as I get older, I have a vested interest in seeing individuals be cured of becoming addicts, because they'll take advantage of seniors. They'll take advantage of even little kids. Don't you know that have you ever seen a murder where there's home invasion and the individuals are usually killed execution style? Well, you can, and I with my professional background in law enforcement, as well as my criminal defense and my prosecution work and my many years of dealing with the criminal justice system, it tells me already that's a hit. And hits come about because of drugs. And this is the part I'm going to say. When the hit takes place, everybody dies. Even the babies die. And it's all about drugs and results in disaster. Then the gangs. When I was coming up as a kid, that there were gangs, but the gangs were not as violent as they are now. What created the violence in gangs was the inclusion of drugs, the primary drug, crack cocaine. And when that came about, and people could get a cheap high, then they came into the hood in the urban areas with a cheap high, and individuals, and crack is very devastating and destructive. So what happens is that the gangs start arming themselves with semi-automatic and powerful weapons to be able to defend their turf or territory where they were distributing their drugs. And then you know what happens is that somebody who wants to compete with you, you know, in business, when somebody wants to compete with you, they open up a business and do it better than you. Well, in the drug field, the gangs, what they do is that they will, as we say, eliminate you, and they will shoot you, but they're not good shots. So as a result, what happens is there are innocent people, even babies. There are people even killed that are in their own houses. Right now I'm sitting here at my house and I'm doing a lecture, and to my left there's a window which I have the blinds closed, but if someone was out firing a shot could come through the glass here and it could hit me right here. These kind of things happen in areas where there's drug distribution and gang warfare. So that's another side of it. But once again, remember this, where I started and where I'm going to finish this particular issue is this. Treat it like a disease. Let's get that fixed. It might not be advantageous, as I heard one of my friends who was a judge, he passed away, but he used to always say, he says, the criminal justice system, if drugs were treated the way that you treat the flu and colds and pneumonia and AIDS and other STDs, he said there would be a drop in a necessity for some individuals' jobs. There will be maybe a drop in law enforcement. There may be a drop in court officers, you know, court reporters, everybody, all the way up to the jails, because there are fewer individuals coming. So there's some economic benefits to recidivism, because then it's like recycling. You know, I can tell you that as a lawyer, and this relates to this, where I represented many individuals. I started out in 1978 representing individuals. By the time I retired in 2000, I was representing some of the children or some of the younger members of the same families that I started out with. So what they were doing, they were breeding the individuals in the area of crime. And drug distribution. And again, so that is what it is. You can finally, if you take a look at this substance abuse and mental illness challenges for intervention on your own, you can read about substance abuse and mental illness. Okay. So I'm not going to go through these questions, but you can go through these on your own and then ask the question, a theory that drug abusers can stop and control their use, but choose not to. What do you call that? What would you call that? Which one? They can stop it. Which one? What's your answer? Of the three theories that I gave. That the abuser can stop or control their use, but they decide not to. What do we call that, or what? Drawing a blank? Look at what I just got through talking about. Nope. Of the three that I talked about here, I talked about three that are in this material in front of you. Notice the question. Abusers can stop or control their use, but choose not to. See what I typed in? Choice. Here it is, right here. It says the choice model is based on the belief that a person chooses to use a substance and therefore can simply stop using it. I already talked about that. See, these things help you to get ready for the exam, because you're going to see that on your quiz. So you go to the next one. And then you type choice. It says the answer was behavioral or moral theory of addiction. Yeah, that's okay. But they say that I typed choice, but I was using the three examples. But the answer, it says, is based on behavior or moral theory of addiction. That goes back to the point that you can just stop at any time, because you can change your behavior anytime you get ready to. So that's how they wrote it. You have to remember something when you read your material and you go over this, that they give you sometimes the long way to get to a quick answer. But the choice method is exactly what it is, but they choose behavior or moral. There's no contradiction, it's just a different way of saying the same thing. Then you go to the theory that drugs directly alter the brain chemistry through their effects on brain, which cause tolerance and withdrawal, produce cravings for the drug, and increase the likelihood of relapse. You'll go through and you'll type that answer in. But remember where you're going to find this information. When you read the chapter, when you look at the PowerPoints. So I don't recall because I haven't looked at it, but let's see what it says. It says you have to put in an answer. So I don't really want to put in an answer, but you can do that when you begin to do these. So that's how you will be able to deal with the theories of addiction and drug identification activity. That will help you with these flashcards. All right? Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to go back, and it's about 7:15. So I'm going to give you a phrase that you're going to use: drug addiction. That's it. That's what I want to see. So make sure you complete your assignments on time. Again, remembering tonight your initial posts are due. Remember your reply posts are due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard if you're in another time zone. And then remember that your written assignment, your course project, is due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, as well as your key phrase that I gave you so that you can maximize your points. I had a student who looked at the video a week afterwards and they got 0 points because I already explained that you start out with 5 points for Sunday, or earlier you get 5 points if you have the correct one, and then Monday it turns to 4 points. Tuesday it turns to 3 points. Wednesday, and so it decreases till by the time you got to Thursday, you're basically out of those points that you really can get. So you want to make sure that you get those done. So, okay, I'm going to say good night, and I'm going to see you next week. And again, pay close attention to the news media, because there's always an issue relating to what we're studying that's on the media, just like I talked about what happened with El Chapo and drugs. It is an ongoing thing, and we as criminal justice future professionals, you guys, should be able to understand and be able to apply that in all aspects, whether in law enforcement, probation, parole, or corrections where you're in the jail or the prisons. Okay? So I'm going to say good night. Okay, thank you.